So we're going to dive in here, Joanna. This is a topic we came up with regards to statistics.
Mhm.
We're going to tie this into what we offer you on the dashboard as far as data. We know data is important. Success in real estate isn't luck. It is a strategy, and we know that data is no longer optional. So we do have a lot of data products on our dashboard, and
Yeah.
professionals that know historical insights and able to look back at stuff and be able to predict what's happening, they own the narrative. And we know that that also wins over people's trust with realtors, and that's important as well. And we also know too, if you go out with a branded shirt on, and I try not to go out when I wear my branded shirt because I look like I work at Best Buy. But you go out in your branded shirt, people ask you how the market's going and what's going on in the marketplace. So today's goal is to learn how to turn raw numbers into powerful client conversations and close deals. So we'll talk about that. So we have a lot of, like I said, a lot of questions around how the market is. It's one of the number one questions asked of realtors, whether you're on an airplane traveling and coming back from someplace or going someplace. But we are going to talk about how to handle that question, because the worst answer is the one that most agents give, which is, it's good or it depends or it's bad. That answer makes it sound very average. And you don't want to sound average. You want to sound like somebody that's trusted authority that has insight into what the market's doing. So the interesting thing about real estate is a lot of the agents, we look at personality types, disc profiles, right?
Mhm.
They're not the analytical folks out
No.
there. They're typically a high I or a high D. You do have some S's in there, but they're not typically your number crunchers. So sometimes you got to force yourself to get in there and look at this stuff, and we try to make it as easy as possible to try to know what's going on with it. So the framework for kind of answering the question of how's the market going, it is give a high level response, but something that kind of sets the tone of the global market. So we have a lot of tools we'll talk about on that. But an example would be inventories up 15% to last year, which gives buyers more options. It's a very high level statement, but it's also not bashing the market. Inventory being up is not a negative. It's giving buyers option. We're tying in the positive. So that is important, because I think you could turn consumers off really quick by saying, inventory's up and things are sitting in the market for longer. That's not the approach we want you giving your customers. We want to, bring in the positive, which is buyers have more options. If we all remember back in 21, 22,
Oh my gosh.
buyers didn't have a lot of options. The option was write a contract and hope you get a house.
I remember 80 offers on a home.
Yep.
No, thank you.
And then next is to drill into local insights. We'll talk about this. Use a neighborhood or city, or a price point. So an example would be is, here in Fort Myers, homes under 500,000 are still moving quickly, average 22 days on market, while luxury listings seeing a little slower absorption, right? Having kind of that sentence that you can talk about. So let's go into kind of where you get this information, right? Because if we talk about, the answering the question here, and where do you get this neighborhood information? So we're going to go into looking at some of the tools that we give you. So on your dashboard here, you've got several different ones I want to highlight real quick for you. We've got Damas Analytics, which is one aspect of market statistics. We have market stats down here, which is InfoSparks, which is driven by Showing Time Plus. Both of them are good tools. They're very different. Okay. We just had Damas in here 2 weeks ago. The founders taught a class here in Fort Myers. It's very different. And so let's dive into here.
Yeah, just kind of a brief overview. If you guys need a deeper dive in any of these tools, we did the market stats tools a couple weeks ago. That's up on YouTube. But Jason talked about like that basic overview of the market. If you're looking for just some good numbers to have conversations with, and you just want, maybe you want to do a monthly check-in or a weekly check-in to figure out what the market's doing so that you can have those conversations. This Domus tool provides several basic overviews on that data. So if you find that you're not the analytics person, this is a great place to go. You can jump in here and just get your numbers. If you wanted to, you could grab this infographic and share it out. But from a conversation piece, it's going to give you the median sales price, but it'll give you those percentage of change, right? So you can come in here, figure out what the positives are, like Jason talked about, and talk to these. If you wanted to only talk to certain areas, maybe you're like the go-to in a community, you can select out your cities here. You can choose, do you want to look at it month over month? Do you want to look at it week over week, year over year? How do you want to compare that data? And then what type of homes do you want to look at? The further you get into these Domus analytics tools, the more filters you'll get. So if you want to get into that granular detail, I suggest coming down here to Market Insights to really drill down into like specific subdivisions or anything like that. But even just your market review here, this will give you another chart with some basic statistics that you can talk to and have these conversations with people. It'll give you the charts, it'll show you the trends, it'll give you the percentage of change. For any type of these stats here, you've got several running down along the side, whether it's days on market, median sales prices, supply inventory, things like that. But Domus is a great tool to come out here, grab some stats really quick, and not have to worry about being that data analytics person. Now, for those of you that love Domus, that's here, that's good to stay, but we've also recently added back in InfoSparks, which we had years ago. We had a lot of people that also loved this tool, and I like to think of this one instead, which, you know, both of these, as we pointed out before, this is where Domus Analytics is. InfoSparks, which is also considered market stats, this is where you're going to get to the second tool here. This is your dashboard. You can filter out lots of different specifics on what you might be looking for. So square footage, bedroom, bathrooms, types of construction. Do you just want to look at single family, specific price ranges? You can also add in areas up here. Do you want to look at the entire MLS? Do you want to filter out a city, county, zip code, geo area? And you're going to get your data down here, and then you can choose your type of data that you want to look at. So right now we're looking at sales price, but you can look at price per square foot. You can look at days on market, showings per listing, because this is connected in with showing time. They'll give you that data, and you can continue to add areas and have it compare. We'll just look at, we'll pick on Cape Coral. So you could compare the entire MLS to just Cape Coral and compare two different areas. I think this is going to give you a more detailed view if you're having very specific conversations with people on what the market looks like, or maybe you're trying to, again, look at your specific neighborhood. This is going to be if you're digging into that data further. And then Domus, the other tool, is going to be your best bet for that, you know, 360-foot view that gives you a bigger overview.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because on here you can go up and you got 3 years here. If you drop down there, let's go 5 years. You'll see a peak here. What's interesting is you've got shows per listing. In 2022, you'd have 12 showings per listing or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
And you can see the peak. Yeah, you can see the peak there in 22. There's a lot less showings there, which tells you the buyer pool is lower, right? Because it's not having as many showings. Now, you also had in 22 a lot more offers coming in. Of those 12 showings, you may have had half them write an offer because inventory was also less. So being able to speak to the whys historically as you have these conversations is how you're going to be able to communicate and connect with that seller or that buyer, and having that information in there. A lot of people are going to tell you, and I'll talk about, you know, family members of mine in the marketplace today in Fort Myers. I mean, they bought their house in 2019. You know, their neighbors next door sold their house in 2022. And they now want to sell their house for the same price their neighbors sold their house in 2022. That just doesn't happen. So on here, I would look at, you know, sale price as a statistic, and median sale price, and you look at what was 2022 was higher, and the number has gone down, right? They're not going up. So if you're going into that person that you had that conversation, and it's always good to go in there and validate or confirm an appointment you've got. but asking them, what's the most important thing to you about listing your home? Is it how fast you got to move, or is it capturing as much dollars as you can? Because those are two separate things. If I have to move fast, I'm surely not going to get 22 prices. But if I sign a 5-year listing agreement with you and I'm hoping to get 22 prices, maybe it'll come in 5 years. I don't know. But you can't have both. So understanding these statistics, I think, are critically important. I do want to segue in here real quick. When you talk about market types, there's 3 market types. You've got a buyer's market, you've got a seller's market, and you've got a balanced market. And what dictates that is basically your month supply of inventory that you have out there. And so if you look at that, you'll know whether or not you got a balanced market, a buyer's market, or a seller's market. So on the buyer side, more inventory than demand will give you, there's your month supply. I'm going to flip that.
Yeah.
So your month supply will give you that. This has got, looking at Cape Coral versus the entire MLS, but we're coming down. And if you look at, zoom in there, you're probably about 6 months supply, or actually, if you touch on top of it, they'll tell you 7.3 months. So if you look at what actually constitutes a buyer versus balance versus seller, under 4 months is a seller's market, less than 4 months of inventory. 4 to 6 months is typically going to be your balance market, and over 6 months is going to be your buyer's market. So we've definitely got a buyer's market still, but it's coming down. So it's coming down to be a more of a balanced market. So as you have those conversations with people, that's important. Now, if you're going into an area, I would go into yeah, you can add in Fort Myers. But I would, if I'm going to a listing appointment, I'm going to try to get granular as I can, because you may have Fort Myers shooting down and Cape Coral shooting down, but what about a certain geocode, or what about a certain neighborhood, a certain area? So I can go in here, and if I'm listing in BN04, I can click on BN04 and it'll show me, well, it's doing the same exact thing. In fact, they had a ton of inventory, right, over 12 months worth, and it shot way down at 6 months of inventory. It's actually right there at the balanced market. And that happened in very short time in 2025, from the beginning of the year till now. So if I'm going to list a house, I'm better off listing today than I was back in December. And you can show that information here. It looks completely different. That orange line looks completely different than your Fort Myers line, your Cape Coral line, and surely your MLS line, right? But they're all kind of doing the same thing, except that hit to a balanced marketplace in BN04 faster than the rest of the market has. Sellers market, demand outpaces supply. Sellers have leverage, multiple offers, bidding wars, and limited concessions. And then your balanced market, again, negotiating power is more even. So be able to have that conversation. How did days on market do it? So let's look at days on market and have the narrative around that. So again, we've got our markets up here. Yeah, BN04 is a fun one.
But so when you get down into the granular detail of it, because like one house, you've got less homes in that area, so one house can really kind of skew that data. You will see more movement the smaller you zone into an area.
Correct. Yeah, it looks more of a something you see in a hospital, probably. With me on a bed with
some of the days on market
yeah.
kind of give us that's what our heart monitors look like. But.
Yeah. So 89 days on market there. So if you look at days on market, declining days on market is hot and seller driven. So we're not there yet, because we know it's a balanced market in BN04, but it's going down. And then rising days on market's cooling and buyer driven marketplace. So those are some things that will tell you that. So again, if you're looking at this general and you're having this conversation, what we know from looking at month supply and looking at days on market is that we've got a market that's coming back into being balanced. Now, regardless of what pricing is doing, we know it's coming into a balanced marketplace based on month supply and days on market. Those two indicators tell us that. The third indicator that you can look at is absorption rate. And so absorption rate, high absorption, homes quickly selling, and low absorption is basically buyers can wait and negotiate on that. So absorption rate is a little bit different. Are you gonna show that on there?
I believe it's one of the features that they're working on adding into Damas, but I'm gonna pull it up and see if we can find it for you guys, because I think it was supposed to launch here recently. Oh, please load for me.
So basically, the math equation is, you wanna look at it this way, it's how many houses sold in a month versus how many houses were available in a month. So if you sold 20 houses and you had 100 houses available, that's 20% absorption rate. That is a high absorption rate. Means that homes are selling quickly. If you sold 5 houses in a month and there's 100 homes to sell, you'd have a 5% absorption rate, which is low, which means it's a buyer's market and they can wait and negotiate. So that's absorption rate. And I think it is in here somewhere, but
It is. We're zooming at the same time and it has taken a hot minute to load.
that's fine. I got a lot to say. So some of the other things that are unique to our marketplace, I want to talk about a little bit, because again, it's about the tool, but it's also about having that conversation. So seasonality, talking about peaking in demands in winter and spring, snowbirds, retirees, second home buyers. Summer tends to cool down for us. It's not 100% that, but if you pull up a 12-month period, you will definitely see that part of it. So as people talk about, I want to sign a 6-month listing agreement with you, and it's July, I'm not going to have a hot market till probably October, November, which is only giving me another 60 days to get that house sold. So when you get that argument or pushback from that seller going, well, I only want to sign a 6-month listing agreement, you're got the slowest time of market right now. And here's an example of that. This absorption rate. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so absorption rate right there is fantastic. So that is market insights from August 2025. And you can see the absorption rate 16.6. That's still high as we talk about absorption rate. But this is something you should know as far as a statistic piece of information.
And the best way to get to this, in case I lost any of you, in Damas Analytics, it is the market insights tool here. So we talked about the further you get into each one of these tools, the more filters you get. That third one in, you've got lots of different stats that you can choose from here under active metrics. You do have absorption rate. And then you can choose what type, how you want that chart to look, but then clicking right here where it says show filters, this is where you can apply those filters. If you just want to look at a certain city, the geo code or a zip code, you can even change in here the price, the square footage, year built. They've got a couple of filters in here so that you can narrow down into it if you need to figure out what the absorption rate is for your niche.
Yeah. Yeah, what I love is you can get that, and what I would use that for is the property for the listing you're going on. You know the zip code, you know the city, the state. Oh, you could really narrow down to what specifically that house is up against based on that local hyper market versus the global thing about the MLS. Because it's one thing to say, and you'll see we've got some areas, and you saw it in BN04. You know, that thing came right down to balanced marketplace after 6 months of selling their inventory, because nobody there is going to put their house in the market. It's a very much a niche market of retirees and snowbirds and second homes. When you get to November, December, you'll see that thing shoot back up.
Here's BN04.
Yeah, that's their absorption rate, very, very high. And it's on the rebound. It's coming back up here in July. So again, every one of these are going to be hyperly different. And you need to speak to that for that specific home. Can we go to look at a 12-month snapshot on here of homes sold? And just look at closed sales in this 12 months.
Takes, we only have. This is everything for single family homes.
Yeah, single family homes is fine.
Okay.
And then just looking at, can we do this 1 year?
Break it down yearly. Hold on. I'm gonna go to August. And it's comparing it to the 1 year up here is where that data is. So August of 2024, it was 1,608. And then we are currently at 1,546, showing a 3.9 decrease. So your yearly stats are up here, and then you're always going to get this data showing across.
Right. And as you
all
click
the way
on it,
back.
yeah, you click on it for the month and you'll see, I mean, this is closed sales. So if you look at the 2025 January, right there, yeah, so you look at that, October, November, and then you got.
There you go.
You got January, so very low sales, but remember that those people aren't buying and list, they're not basically writing contracts in December to close in January. So, but you see that take off, and it goes way up, and that kind of pays the seasonality, right? So March, etc., that the closings happen, contracts are written 30 or 60 days prior to when you see the closings. There you go.
Yeah, we can do different timelines here. We're gonna hop from Damas over into, there you go.
Yeah, so you
Damas
guys,
into InfoSparks, if you just want to look at 1 year.
yeah, so you can see the sales are up, right, in that first and second quarter in all the years. If you did it for
Mhm.
3 years, you always see that peak on there. So that kind of plays into the idea that we have seasonality peaks and valleys. So if I'm gonna list my house in, you look at the valley there, in 2025, that's like there's 4 houses in November. And that's when you're listing it, there's no activity, right? For a couple months, you may want to extend that listing agreement longer. So just have that conversation. Obviously, migration trends in Florida play a part in this. So we are a very desirable state to live in. We have a lot of our folks coming down here from the Midwest and from the Northeast, which is when you look at long-term demand, it's there. Right now, you got a lot of the boomers retiring, so they're starting to cash out up north and come down here. So even though we have this, market that may seem a little slower today, I'll say 2 things about it. One is we are ahead of the rest of the world right now in the United States in real estate. What we're experiencing in the last 12 months, parts of the United States are just feeling it today. So in other words, excess inventory, days on market going up, absorption rate going down, all those things that we look at, we're a year into it. The rest of the country is feeling it today. They're saying, "Oh my God, we no longer have this." Part's also having multiple offers still, right? They'll be last to go through this, but everybody's going to go through this. We're just leading the way. So a slower market, less buyers, and there's some other things that play into this for us. Long term, we have stability being a very desirable area and state. But the other things that apply into this is hurricanes and insurance costs, right? That's a part of it. Contemporary suppress the market and demand. Today is the 8th. You got about 4 more weeks of hurricane season. And we haven't had a major storm yet. So we can go a couple of years without a major storm. We had it for a while. Since Charlie to Irma, we really didn't have any major hurricanes, knock on wood. And you had Irma, you had a couple of years off, and you had Ian, a year off, and then you had the 2 last year with Milton, and its twin brother. But those types of things can also affect the marketplace. So it's stuff that we don't see. But if you go back to look at statistically what happened after Irma, what happened after Ian on those dates on inventory, specifically around, a very finite granule area like the beach, you'll see what happens, right? People don't repair, they put houses on the market, condos, etc. So, and then again, investor activity. So when you look at condos, you look at second home investments, the rentals and the impact on that as well. We have a lot of Airbnb stuff happening, right? Single families and for condos. That plays a role in it as well, for what we're doing. So let's go into some of the other tools that we got. It's a good point to show Florida Realtor Sun Stats, because and all these tools have a basic, I would say, a function, right? So Damas to me is kind of that, give me that infographic, let me post it to social media, right? And as you do this stuff and you post it to social media, you're looking at it, you're reviewing it, you're absorbing it, right? It's on your social media page. You then start building trust with your community that you have these numbers and you have this information. And you get granular as you go across the top, as Joanna said. InfoSparks is very granular. It's ran off showing times. So you have showing information. which you don't have in Damas because they don't have that data. And then I look at Florida Realtor Sun Stats. I look at high level stuff, right? So you have Cape Coral, Fort Myers, MSA, metropolitan area as a whole, very global. And there's some great things in there. And they have all of Florida. There's some great things in there, but it's very high level, right? It's not that granular. So unless you have a niche somewhere, unless your focus is 100% on Gateway, and that's all you're posting, and you're posting Gateway versus the rest of the MLS, or Gateway versus Lee County, right? To show the compare and contrast of what's happening specifically there. A lot of what we see realtors do is put some of this information out there at a high level, right? So they're talking about, in Florida, we had, 24,322 sales that occurred in the month of May. High level stuff. And then you can granularly get down to other things. You can talk about medium home prices, you can talk about condos, you can talk about cash sales and closed sales and dollar value and all this other stuff. So there is some of that, but it's not going to get you broken down into geo, right? It's going to give a very high level stuff. So you're talking state, you're talking cities, metropolitan areas. You're not going to get it granular into a subdivision necessarily here.
No, and this is really pulling in data from all of the MLSs across the state. So the best use case for this is when you're trying to pull information from another city. So you can go out here. We see a lot of people that say, hey, I want to compare our data to Sarasota. We see that like Lee County is compared to Sarasota a lot. You can come out here, you can select things by the MSA, or you can select them by the city, or you could select the whole state. So, and the county as well. So whatever it is that you're looking for across the state, that information you're going to use SunStats for. And you would go out to Florida Realtors website, go into their tools, and you would log in as a member of Florida Realtors in there. It's provided by them and it's on their website. If you're having a hard time looking for that, but they have a lot of those same metrics that we do, right? Like active inventory, days on market. You can select what that might be. A few different filters down through here, the reporting type, monthly, quarter, yearly. You can do a specific date range if you need. And you get the hard data down here. You have the chart, but what is also great is if you go one tab over, you've got it in an infographic creator. So this is something that you can grab and either send out, or you could post on your socials if you're looking to compare markets. Maybe you just want to compare our market to Florida overall, or maybe you're comparing, us to Sarasota. Like, I said that happens a lot, or any other area that your customers might be looking at saying, well, we're torn between two areas, whether it's going to be Cape Coral or Sarasota. Can you talk to us about the differences in the market between those two areas? This is going to help you with those conversation pieces.
Right. And I love the infographics again. I mean, this is easy. Literally, you can send this to Facebook in 3 clicks. Which is great. There's no reason why every single agent out there on their socials not posting these infographics, because it tells a story. And again, you can get as granular or as high level as you want to, but it's powerful to have that information, to be able to put that in there. So yeah, look at so you look at closed sales are down, but also new listings are down. And they're down equally 2.8%, right? And you look at dollar volume, that's down, but you also look at active inventory, new pending sales, that's down, right? So you got a lot of information here.
Yeah. So, and like you said, this is kind of that basic overview of the whole state or the different areas. But we also have, aside from, we've shown you Damas, we've shown you InfoSparks. If you really, really want to get into the data and kind of get your hands dirty, you can go into Matrix, and a lot of people we notice don't use the stats tab up here, and it's got a lot of great options in here. So you can go into any type of the data buckets, same as you do when you search, right? You've got residential income, rental, lot and land, whatever your specialty may be. We're just going to hop into residential here. And in here, they've got a lot of like preset data polls that you can do, but they also have a customized button. So if you start feeling a little nerdy and you really want to get into the data and start pulling your own types of stats, or maybe you just need something that's very specific that fits a niche, you can customize that data. But this search works the same as when you're searching an MLS. So it's something that you're very comfortable with, something you're familiar with. So we see this used a lot, specifically, people who are doing specific communities. You can plug in your development here. So we'll do Pelican Preserve, if I can spell, which is only on a good day. Lots of pelicans in the area. All right, Pelican Preserve. You can add in whatever filters you might need. You can add and remove additional fields. I mean, I had somebody who called in the other day that wanted to pull stats just on stilt homes. It's very, very specific. So we added in that filter there for the build type, and they pulled stats just on the stilt homes in the area. But once you add in whatever parameters you might need, you can pull these different types of charts. You've got days on market versus the list price, historic count of the active listings at that time, historic count of sales. And some of these parameters are ones that you've seen in the other tools as well. It comes out different though. If you wanted to look at this customize tab here to build out your own type of metric or stat, what it does is allows you to select the time frame. Do you just want to look at the previous month, maybe the previous year? Do you want to look at a very specific customized date range? So we can say we want to look at November of last year to where we are now. And then you choose your type of statistic. There are a lot to choose from here. Something we helped somebody out with just yesterday. They were comparing active listings over the past year to the amount of new listings, which, one is just how many are in MLS, and the other one is how many new ones hit the market that month. And then how do you want your chart to group this? If you maybe selected different cities, you can have a breakout where it compares each city. For this one, we're going to show it to compare month over month. Once you've built everything out the way that you like it, you can click generate, and it's going to give you a chart here. If you want the hard data, you can also go one tab over and just get the data. Maybe you want to get it in an Excel spreadsheet if there's something specific you're looking to do with that data. But your chart here where it's broken out month over month, this is where you can select it. You can break it out and compare it city over city, year over year, break it out by sales price areas. This is, like I said, it's where you can get very nerdy and get into the data and build out your own type of charts for specifically anything you need to pull within the MLS.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this part of it, to really get into the searching of, this is what you'd use to go into it, to your CMA and to your listing presentation, because you can get down to, the development name and single family and bedrooms and baths and look apples to apples to apples. Pool, no pool, and really look at price per square foot, where it's gone. And, one of the things I love about numbers is that when you look at what customers and consumers are looking at, they want you to have the understanding. They don't want opinions, they want facts. So the more information you can provide them, right, and you put it in front of them, sometimes you don't have to say a word. They just look at it, okay, but we're not blowing smoke. And here's where I think people go wrong, at least in my personal opinion of being in the industry for 20 years, is they show up, and I look at myself as a consumer today. You show up, you give me a listing presentation, you go over all the things you do to market, all the stuff you're going to do, and then what you're going to price it at. But you don't provide me anything but comps. You don't provide me any history. You don't provide me the trends that are coming up and where the market's going, right? Nothing backing that except historical data, which is, let's face it, when you look at comparables, it's historical data. It's what happened in the past. Doesn't necessarily creates the picture for the future of what's happening. So if you're not smart enough, or you don't look at the data the way you should, or whatever the case may be, and then Joanna comes in and she does look at the data and she goes, wait a minute, we're seeing a shift here to be a seller's market. We think you can get an extra $2 per square foot, or $3 per square foot, which over the macro of it, maybe $12,000-$15,000 difference in price. And you're like, why didn't I get that listing? Well, Joanna priced it not only looking at historical, but looking at the trend moving forward.
And there's so many times that whether they're a buyer or a seller, they're having that conversation with us or with the realtor that says, what is the market going to do? And how often do you hear the realtor respond with, well, I don't have a crystal ball. You don't. Nobody does. Anything can change, right? Nobody predicted COVID, but here's the historic, here's what to expect. And they can feel more confident in that decision they're making. They can feel more confident in the future. It's not an exact answer. You're not telling them exactly what's going to happen, but they can feel more comfortable with where you believe it might be headed.
Well, and I also think you can also answer more confidently by anchoring to data
Mhm.
and trends. And you can use kind of the framework of predictability. Past performance reveals patterns that inform future opportunities. So if you know this happened the last 4 years,
Mhm.
and that May is where contracts happen in this particular development, because you see the most pendings go in May, that's something that you can probably say, even though a crystal ball went, this year, this May is not going to be any different, right? We always see an increase in this neighborhood with pendings because that's just what we've seen. So, past performance reveals patterns that predict the future. Second is credibility. Numbers speak louder than opinions. So if you can show data-backed information and insights, right, by using these tools, then you have authority with the clients. They respect that, especially those that have that disc profile where they are the analytics and you may not be.
You gotta meet them at their level.
You have
really
to, and you know
do.
where they're at. And the context, a single sale does not tell the story. Three comparables of my home does not tell the story of, long-term trends reveal the market's true direction. So where is the market going? To me, and this is, it's interesting because I had a house that I sold, and I always tell the story when I'm in front of people, but I had a house I sold in Arlington, Texas, and I sold it because I was buying a condo downtown. I was buying a large high-rise condo that it was always my dream to live downtown Fort Worth, Texas. And so I was selling my Arlington home. It was supposed to be a flip. It's the longest flip I ever bought. I ended up living in that house for about 3 years. And making it truly my own. I redid pretty much everything in it. I bought it. It was a distressed property that was new construction that the people that were building it got divorced and basically abandoned the project. So what the builders did was put everything that they could find that was cheap and threw it in the house. And the house is gorgeous, except they had the cheapest appliances, the cheapest faucets, the cheapest sinks, the cheapest flooring, the cheapest everything about it. So I went and redid all of that, although it was brand new. And when I sold the house, I basically interviewed 3 realtors. I know people don't think people do that,
They
right?
do.
And this is way before I was in real estate, but that's what I did. And I'm a 99D, 99I. So from a disc profile, not the analytics person, but I'm going to shop around. I'm not shopping for a better deal, but I'm shopping around. And I brought in the billboard person, the person that was on the billboard off the interstate. And I talked to that person to list the house, and I also talked to the local person that was farming it. She was a mom in the neighborhood, family lived there, but this was the local expert in the neighborhood that sent out postcards, just listed, just sold. She had all the signs in the neighborhood, so I contacted her. And then through a random mailing, believe it or not, through statistics, was a postcard that talked about what's happening in the marketplace from this young lady that she just sent out postcards, right? So being able to show that and send out what's happening in the market, great farming techniques. I called the farmer, so to speak. And I interviewed all 3 of them. And what was interesting is the farmer could tell me what she felt the market was doing and kind of where it was going based on trends. And it wasn't so much the 3 comps, because guess what? Out of the 3 people that came to my house, 2 of them used the same 3 comps, and the third person used 2 comps that were the same and one that was completely different, and was able to explain that. Which by the way was a farmer.
Mhm.
Who again, I got like 2 mailings from her. And then the farmer was able to say where it was going to go. Anyways, long story short, the billboard guy said, go for the stars, list this how you can list it for. The
Make his
local,
numbers look
right.
good, right?
The local one said, here's where you need to be, a very conservative number. I wasn't comfortable with it. And then the farmer said, well, here's where the market's going. It's gonna be a seller's market next 2 months. Here's why the market's gonna do it. There's 2 more businesses opening up in Arlington, Texas. They're gonna bring in about 6,000 jobs, all this stuff. I'm like, okay.
Did her
Get
homework.
information that they brought. So I hired the farmer. The other thing I'll tell you as a side note is, the customer's always right. I
I hate this part.
She hates business cards. So I didn't want a business card left. I didn't want to sign the front. I didn't want a key
Lock
box
box.
on it. And they're like, and there was personal reasons for that. I won't get into it, but that's the part she hates. But I said, I don't want these things in there. And you know,
For security purposes.
the local lady and,
Security
and the
purposes.
billboard guys, like, you have to have a lockbox, you have to have a sign, you have to have a firebox, all this other garbage. I don't want it. And they're fighting me on this, and the farmer's like, no problem,
We'll do what you
we'll
want.
do what you want. And I said, okay. I said, how are you gonna let people in? She goes, I'll be at every show. I'm like, God bless your heart. Well, I hired the farmer. Got a great offer. She was right with the price. I ended up with $26,000 more net than what anybody else would have given me, until including that guy, because that thing would have sat in the market probably for
Yeah.
2 years. And I was buying another house. I was under contract already. But she got me the most money, and it was $26,000 net. I remember that. And I had taken her to dinner and to thank her for it. And we're sitting there. I told her, I said, you must be crushing it. Your idea of like where the market's going, and it's kind of like the hockey thing. You don't skate where the puck's at, you skate where the puck's going. And as a hockey guy, I love that kind of visual. So we went where the market was going, and sure enough, that new business opened a week after I listed it, and somebody that was moving into that new business bought the house, and I had it under contract in 60 days. But she was correct in her thoughts. We went higher. They wanted to negotiate down, and we were good. But I told her, you must be crushing it in the business. And she laughed at me. She goes, you're my first sale. So here's what I'm going to tell you what I learned from that, right? She never told me that, never asked. I don't care. But she came in with such confidence and knowledge of the marketplace. She came in telling me where the puck was going to go, and had things that she knew. You know, it wasn't a crystal ball, but she knew 2 major businesses with 6,000 employees were opening up within 8 miles where I lived, right? And I lived on the lake, and she's like, some exec's going to come in and snatch his house up. And based on the fact that it's now going to be a seller's market, because absorption rate, days on market, all these other indicators, this is where you need to be. I netted $26,000 more. That was in 2002, long time ago. Way before I got into real estate. Here's what I tell you. I gave this woman, she's now got kids. She got married, she's got kids, family. I still talk to her to this day. We became good friends. I spent Christmas there about 6 years ago. With her husband, I went actually duck hunting. Fantastic woman, built a huge business. I give her so many just verbal referrals. You know, if you're selling Arlington, Texas, this is who you go to. And ironically, she bought the house across the street from that house that I sold after she got established and got married. So kind of a cool thing. But that credibility is so important. Be able to show people where things are going to go, but be able to back it up. You know, the guy who was the billboard guy that came and gave me this a price, I said, why are you so confident? And he, you know, if it would have sold for that, it would probably have been close to the same amount. But he was much higher on what he wanted to list it at. And I'm sure people would negotiate way down, but I'm like, it would have sat in the market longer, right? And I have holding costs. I was closing on a property in 30 days. So when I asked him why, his comment to me was just the way the market is today. That's not specific, right? She was able to tell me about the businesses, what the business name were, how many employees are coming. Know your market, know what's happening. You know, there's an Amazon building coming here off 75. How many employees are they bringing in? Do you know? If you're selling something there in the Forum, which is right next to where they're building it, or in Gateway, which is not too far, in Lehigh, on the western side, you should know this stuff and know how many employees are going to be looking for homes to purchase out there. So creativity, credibility, and context is important as we talk about this. So you had some questions you were going to ask. Did I already answer them?
I think you already answered all of them. I mean, we talked about the crystal ball. We don't want to use that phrase anymore. Listing presentations, you know, bringing in that data ahead of time, and the conversation of, is right now the right time to sell? That's the question everybody's getting. You know, we talked about how is the market, you've covered that, but is right now the right time to sell or buy?
Right. So I think
How do you handle
you can
it?
tell people, you know, there's no, you know, no one person or one thing can predict the market 100% accuracy. It can't. Nobody saw the fall of 2007, right? But we saw the indicators coming. We saw people pull out of contracts before they closed and lose their security deposit. We saw pricing start to plummet. We saw inventory start to rise. All those things were out there. And then the market, just the bottom fell out, right? So you can't predict it with 100% accuracy, but you can see where the direction of the market is going based on the current data. So I think that that's important. And, you know, is this a good time to sell? Again, I would look at are we in a point in the year where properties are selling more than another point in the year? Right? So I'm not gonna overpromise you. I'm gonna say, Joanna, in June, July, and August, properties typically don't, there's only like 12 properties a
Mhm.
month that sell in your area. But in October, November, December, that number doubles to 24 a month on average.
Mhm.
You have a better chance of selling it in those months. Do you want to list it now or do you want to wait till October? Right? And she may say, you know what, let's do the middle. List it in September. We're out of the slow months, but I want to get in the market so it's there and we're the first to market, right? So the other thing is how many other homes are on the market in that street? Sometimes that is a consideration. If they don't have to sell, excuse me, today, but if there's 12 other houses within 2 blocks and they have to sell because they're moving to Atlanta for a job transfer, how are you pricing it?
Mhm.
Right? It's never a bad time to sell, is the reality, right? It's never a bad time. It's just
What are your needs?
what are your needs? How fast you have to be there?
Understanding that customer.
Yeah, understand the customer and finding out what's their plan, where they going. And it always amazes me. I talk to agents about, finding out where they're going. I used to talk to agents all the time going, how did the listing appointment go? Oh, fantastic. I got the listing. Fine. Where are they going to? I don't know. Well, that's a key portion of that. That's like the center of,
Clueless.
that's like the center of the donut, right? Because not only do you not know the strategy, yeah, not only do you not know the strategy, but you also lost an opportunity for a referral, which I think is huge, right? So, again, looking at inventory trends, days on market, those types of things will all tell you whether or not it's a time to sell. But it's never a bad time to sell. It's just, sometimes how beat up do you want to get a price? How bad, what's your expectations? Again, finding out the consumer expectation is important. I hate to overpromise, underdeliver. I rather underpromise and overdeliver because that drives referral business. And that's what, I think if you can start to build a business based on referrals, you've got a lot of good stuff going on.
Mhm.
So what other questions did you have on your sheet there?
You've got them all.
Okay,
You've got them all. You win it. You can get the listing. I'll buy from you.
perfect.
But I think we've also, covered a lot of tools for you guys today. And like I said, if you need a deeper dive, we've spent like an entire hour just on Domus Analytics. That's up on YouTube, an entire hour with Info Sparks and Sunstats and those things. And those tools are there to help you with those conversations as you're trying to figure out what your clients' needs may be. If time is not as important to them, but price is, show them the trends of price sales, and then you can figure out when the right time to list is. But if they need to sell right now, then set their expectation of what that price is going to look like typically during that time frame. Those graphs, you can print them out and send it to them. You can also open it up when you're sitting there with them, and they're very interactive so that you can pull your mouse over each data point. Some of those different tools will also, you can send out a link so that they can interact with those graphs as well. But that's really what's going to drive your points home.
Yeah, I think that if you look at building your CMAs, and the piece of advice I'd leave you with is build your CMAs with historical justification, not just comps. We're not appraisers, right? Appraisers are steadfast as to the appraisal, but you know where the puck is going, right? And if you look at market shifts and look at some of the leading indicators like days on market, absorption rate, are days on market going down or up? Don't look at the spikes that we saw in BN04 because you'd be all over the board. Look at the overall trend.
Mhm.
It's slowly coming down and it's coming down 5% a month. In 5 months, it'll be down 25%. It'll be below that, it'll be a seller's market, right? So you can kind of predict that. Now, something crazy could happen. You have a pandemic or something like that, and the market shifts again. But if you see it consistently going down on the graph and you can speak to that, that's where the puck is going. And you can kind of see that kind of leading indicator, if you will.
Perfect. And I don't think we have anything in our Q&A, so.
Nothing, questions and answers. Nobody's got their hand raised
Answered all their little questions.
before they had questions. All right. So any final thoughts for you? No. I would just leave with a couple quick things. I would tell you to use a lot of graphs and charts versus numbers.
Mhm.
I had an agent show up to a relative's house that I had referred a couple years ago, and brought spreadsheets. And I couldn't believe it, but that's what they did. So
Small portion of the population that
yeah,
obsessed.
line
with
graphs,
spreadsheets.
bar charts, bar charts, absorption curves, those types of things, something clean, something that's readable. And then I would also tell you, a synopsis, is always good to leave with a customer. Here's where I think the market's going and why, because one of the things that farmer did when she came in at listing presentation, she left me kind of a one-pager analysis of what she thinks will happen in my neighborhood. And she had very specifically on there a section that said 1, 2, 3, Donnie Street listed at this amount on this date. And she had some insights on price reduction and things like that. So she actually did a very deep dive into the neighborhood, what was happening, because that is the competition of that listing. And sellers know that. Sellers know their neighbors just redid their kitchen, put $35,000 into it. And it's already on the market and knows that they've had 15 showings. And I don't have that. So how am I going to compete? So understand that piece of it as well. And understand what the competitive advantage of each house is that you list. What's going to make it stick apart. I will leave you with one more thing.
Okay, but there's more.
But there's more. Rich Media, I just did a video on this. Rich Media. So we provide you with a couple different platforms that provide you with rich media. And Cubicasa is the first one. So Cubicasa has got a floor plan that you can do on the app for free, a 2D floor plan. That's considered rich media.
Oh, where did I go? Here we are.
Cubicasa right
I
there.
scrolled too far.
Yeah, so Cubicasa is right there. Put a floor plan with your properties. It does stop the scroll, so to speak, right? When you talk about viral marketing and internet, it stops the scroll. People want to know what that floor plan looks like. Again, it's not about outdoing the agent that you're up against. It's about providing them with value. When these listings get syndicated off to third-party sites, to portals and third-party sites, the algorithm picks up on these rich media pieces, which is Cubicasa for floor plans. 360 tours, virtual tours are important. Flyover drone, Matterport, all that's considered rich media. And so it does, the algorithm pushes those listings to the top because all these portals want, when people go and search the 3.2 in Cape Coral for 365, the rich media ones are the first ones that show up. They may have been listed last week. They've been listed 3 months ago, but it's going to show up on top. So use these tools that are out there with rich media when you get the listing, because it's going to get it more visibility on the internet and more clicks. And I just pulled up, I was talking to an agent a couple weeks ago and talking about this, and I think they had some doubt on it. We actually pulled up 4 listings, 2 had rich media, 2 did not, and just looked at the clicks that they're getting on social media or on these portals, and it's 3 times the clicks. So it just increases that exposure for your property. So
It's a great tip.
all right, well, I appreciate you guys showing up, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.